Hey guys, Chara5 here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what I've thought about Sonic Forces. This isn't actually a what I've thought about video. That will come like 20 years from now, whenever I get around to it. I do have a playthrough recorded, so I guess I could technically do it, so there's that. I might do it, depending. But we're going to have a little bit of a discussion as to what I actually thought about the game, because, of course, the Everything Wrong With doesn't accurately reflect what I think about the game, to a degree in this case. And I got the game day one, as with a lot of people. I saw the trailer, the reveal trailer, when it came out back in like, it must have been like April or something. I think it came out at like a Comic-Con, I believe, and I think it was San Diego. And when I saw it, I was really intrigued by the thought of a new boost formula game, and I think, as with a lot of other people, I was super excited to see, you know, a new modern Sonic game, and most of all, knowing the information that it's a game that's kind of post-apocalyptic, in the sense that Eggman's already won, and now you have to take the world back. To me, that was a super interesting concept. And I think that is the main theme around the game as a whole. It's just a bunch of really interesting concepts that, unfortunately, they did not execute well. Starting off, I think, the story mainly. Later on, we were introduced to a new villain named Infinite. We were told that we would be able to customize our, we're going to make our own avatar characters. I remember it was in promotional material. It was either a trailer or like an image. No, it was in one of the trailers, I remember, because like there was this hooded not this hooded figure, but the silhouette of a character that I remember everyone kept saying it was Bubsy. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, Bubsy's gonna be inside!" Like no one, I'm assuming no one was serious about it, but like it was undeniably like very similar to Bubsy the Bobcat's design. And ironically, a Bubsy game did actually come out before the release of Forces. And I've not touched that game at all. I don't know if it was okay or not. Probably wasn't. But it was really funny that they didn't even at all like make a big deal out of, oh, hey, look, a new Bubsy game. Ironically, like 7 days before, a week literally before Forces comes out. And Forces came out on the Switch. I think it was announced before the Switch even came out, I think. I don't remember. It might have been something like that. It was either Mania or no, because I think they were announced together last year. So that they were announced before the Switch was even revealed, I think. So it was released on PS4, Switch, Xbox One, PC, as like a lot of Sonic games nowadays are doing. And, you know, as like with a lot of modern Sonic games, the boost formula return, like it's hard to talk about this without comparing it to Generations, right? Because in the very first trailer, we saw, I think it was in the very first trailer, something like that, we saw Classic Sonic immediately. And I remember I actually did a discussion video on it, and I remember saying from that very moment, I was like, God damn it, why is Classic Sonic back? A lot of people were like, oh, when is Generations 2 coming out? And to me, it's like, well, that's the thing, right? If the reason Sonic Generations and Classic Sonic were special was because it was something we hadn't seen in 20 years, right? So it's like, if you're bringing Classic Sonic back, what makes it special? If we're getting a Generations 2, like, I guess conceptually it's a good idea, but you're kind of just begging for them to do the same thing over and over and over again. Which, I mean, yeah, it worked, but that's not optimal. They should try new things. I don't like Lost World, but I can commend it for doing something different. And there's nothing wrong with Lost World. In essence, it's a game that plays well. I'm not very intrigued by the style. It's a good game, just not a good Sonic game. And, you know, I think partially the same thing can be said about Forces. There's nothing inherently bad about Forces. It's a plethora of disappointment. you were promising us a lot of things that in the end we really didn't get. And what's worse about it is just like the story behind the scenes, right? Apparently this game has been in development for 4 years. Like, how is it that this game has been in development for 4 years and yet we only have 5 locales? We only have 30 stages. You can beat this game in under 3 hours if you know what you're doing and if you skip all the cutscenes. It's a really... Not only that, but the stipulations for S ranking the missions they're next to nothing. You can do it really easily. Sometimes it's harder to get a C rank than it is to get an A rank. And it's like, how is that possible? How was that this game was in development for 4 years, how did you oversee that? How did you like turn a blind eye to it? Going back to the silhouette of the character that's Bubsy, it turns out that they revealed that they were going to include customizable avatars, which to me, it was really weird to hear that, because I was like, yes, but at the same time, what? I thought it was a great idea because it's catering to an audience. Like, they know Takashi Iizuka, or someone in the development team knew, that so many people that grew up with Sonic ended up making fan characters about it, and Sonic fan characters. And I, as well as many other people that I know, had made one during like their preteen years. And to me, I always said that I would never, I would always use my fan character even when I was an adult. And I guess that still kind of rings true, but I have evolved that character to not be a fan character anymore. He's now his own character with no relation to Sonic. In fact, he never had a relationship with Sonic, my fan character. But a lot of people's original quote-unquote characters do have a relationship to Sonic because, like, that's the point. And I thought, like, okay, this is a great idea to cater to the audience, but I don't know what you're going to do with it in terms of a story or how you're going to incorporate them. I think the thing that was on a lot of people's minds was, what are you going to have them do? What's their play style? And what I think their play style isn't bad. In fact, if anything, I'd say they're probably my favorite character to play as. No, that's not true, because we also got free DLC, which was episode Shadow, where you get to play as Shadow the Hedgehog for the first time in God knows how long. And honestly, I don't know why I love the way Shadow controls in episode Shadow. It feels, for some reason, different than the way modern Sonic controls. And his level design is more forgiving. To me, that was the main issue with Forces, was the level design, not so much the gameplay. Even though, like, because I think modern Sonic controls fairly similarly, and classic Sonic controls even weirder than he does in Generations. Like, in Generations, he felt good, but he of course didn't feel the same as his Genesis counterparts, or even like Mania, for example. Mania got it down correctly because the development team knew what a classic Sonic game was. They've been working on like ROM hacks for years, and they've been coding their own engines and stuff, so they know what it's like to have proper physics and proper control. When it came time to do Generations, I'm assuming they were like, okay, well, we have to recreate that feeling or something similar, but now for like a new generation console with the Havoc engine, or the Hedgehog engine, whatever they were using at the time. And I don't know if they recreated it for Forces or what, but classic Sonic feels heavy. He does not, like, already the Generations classic Sonic did not have the same physics. With Forces, it's way more noticeable. And I like to say that classic Sonic feels like he has super glue on his feet, because I think what we were used to back in the day was that if you jumped forward with classic Sonic, or I guess with Sonic back in the day, he carries momentum. So you jump forward, he still like steps a few times. So when it came to platforming, if you jumped to the next platform, you had to push back so that you didn't overshoot it. In this case, if you push back, you'll actually undershoot it because you're so used to that. So as soon as you jump and you land on a platform, you will land on the platform. There's no need to push any other buttons or the control stick or anything. You're going to land there and you'll be safe. And I think that when you go into the gameplay with that mindset, it becomes a lot easier, but you're always being tricked because you're like, this is classic Sonic, this is the way he should control. Not only that, but holy God, the amount of bottomless pits in this game. I think 90%, if not 95% of my deaths in the game were due to bottomless pits. There are so many, and they had to do that because the robots, the enemies in the game, are terrible. Yes, they will hit you, but they're not really a threat. Oftentimes, the only reason they'll hit you is because you run into them. Okay, and I know that a lot of people like to bash on Forces and, talk about why it's not good. I don't consider it a bad game, but I certainly do not consider it a good game either. However, to its credit, I will say some positive things about it, and I think a lot of people have agreed with me on this. I love the way Forces looks. Even on a Switch, which is the version I own, it looks great. I think it still looks it looks comparable to, from what I've heard, the PS4 version, the PC version, the Xbox version, whatever. It looks great. Artistic design, it looks wonderful. It's no Generations, but it still looks pretty good because in Generations, what they did was they put pseudo realistic environments with Sonic, which I personally think have strangely always fit. Ever since Adventure, it's just okay, I know that this is a cartoon world and whatever, but for some reason this aesthetic kind of fits. And in Generations, I think it's illustrated best. And then Lost World came around and they oversimplified it. It's jarring how simple everything around you looks, but you could call that, okay, well, that's just the lost text, even though when you go back and see Sonic's world, there are Minecraft trees, so that's kind of weird. And then I think Forces kind of meets a compromise between the two. It meets a compromise of, okay, let's make it a little bit more realistic than Lost World, but certainly less realistic than Generations, which I think is okay. I still prefer the more realistic approach Generations has, but I don't dislike the direction they went in with Forces. Music, I think, ironically, is my favorite thing about the game. I do like all the tracks. I like, for example, that they didn't, despite the fact that we venture through Green Hill Zone again for the upteenth time, despite that, they used a new theme. So it's not at all even close to the classic Green Hill Zone theme, which I personally like. I love the Green Hill Zone music, but I like that they did something different with it. I like that they know what the fans like. So the Avatar stages have vocal themes, which I think are good. Sometimes they use too much autotune for my liking, but I still like the music in it. In terms of the characters, a lot of people are still shitting on the voice actors, when to me it's okay, I think I'm past that point. They're still not my favorite voices, but in terms of their acting, they're fantastic. I love the way that they act. In terms of the characters, what I liked the most about them was their interactions. From the moment I saw the trailers that showcase that they would talk to each other, I feel like a lot of people kind of shook their heads and were like, no, please don't make them do this. I think personally that it adds a lot of, not realism, but it adds life to the game. In Generations, it was annoying because it happened at the very end, and you're not used to your friends talking to you. So in that final fight, it was hey, that looks like a homing shot. Careful, Sonic, that's a homing shot. They kept saying the same thing over and over again, and they didn't add anything to it. In Forces, though, them interacting with you, I think, just brings up a lot of life. Hey, this is going on here, or hey, be careful, something's gonna happen. And I never found it annoying. Sure, they weren't helping per se, but again, I think it adds life. You're supposed to be a team, hence the resistance. And everyone got hyped about it too, because it's wait, what does this mean? Does this mean more playable characters? Unfortunately, no, but they were sort of going for something like that. They promised us returning bosses. Zavok from Lost World, Chaos Zero from Sonic Adventure, Shadow from Adventure 2, Metal Sonic from Sonic ZD. And it's okay, you only get to fight two of them. You never fight Shadow, and you never fight Chaos Zero. And the worst part of it was that they all ended up being copies that Infinite, the new villain, created. When it comes to Infinite, I love him. I love his voice. I love how intimidating he can be. I love how cocky he can be. And then Episode Shadow ruins it by making him a whiny bitch. Because the things he says are really cool. They're really intimidating. And I think Infinite despite how people like making fun that he's an edgy villain, I like how over-the-top edgy he is. I think that's why people, to a degree, like Shadow. This is the final result, and God, I can keep going on about, like, Forces. All in all, I wish that they had done something differently with Infinite, you know, made the story a bit more clear, because, again, there's the prequel comic, which, yeah, it's free, but I still shouldn't have to read it. You know, you're telling me a bunch of things, and you're priding yourself on that, and yet you're telling me nothing. You know, and I don't understand why they keep using the same. Nothing against the writers of the game. I'm sure they're great people. They make funny lines, but they don't know how to be serious. That's the problem. They have the same writers that they had when they started out with Colors. In Colors, they took nothing seriously, and a lot of people criticized that. Okay, in Generations, we're going to drop the funny a little bit, and there was practically no story in Generations, but it worked well. It made up for it in the gameplay. In Lost World, the gameplay was still there and it was fine, and the story was, again, sort of lacking. Like, they kind of tried to be a little bit more serious with it, and I think in some instances it works. I like, you know, the storyline of Sonic and Eggman teaming up, blah, blah, blah. They have serious moments, even if the characterization of Tails really sucks in that game. In Forces, it's like, okay, you want edgy, we'll give you edgy. It's like, okay, yeah, you tried to give us edgy, but you didn't know what to do with it. And that's the problem. All in all, I think Forces is a step in the right direction, but how many times are we going to say that? How many times are we going to say, hey, this is a step in the right direction? And I say that not because, like, I like Forces. I can't say I like it, I can't say I dislike it. I like the edgy story, even though I think it's written terribly, because the pacing is awful. You go from one thing to another in a split second, and then nothing happens. You expect us to believe, hey, this is how this character's going to react. You are telling us things that the next scene we're going to realize aren't true. You're promising us things that don't end up happening. So I've always said that it's such a disappointment. You had 4 years of development, and you didn't use any of the elements that made the previous games good. From the people that brought you Sonic Colors and Generations. Who? Sonic Team? Because apparently, from what I've heard, the developers were like, it was one person who'd worked on, like, Lost World, and then everyone else was new, so you can't say that. And I don't want to bash on the game, because I know a lot of people like it, but why? When it comes to Adventure and Adventure 2, the reason we like those games is because they didn't have to overcomplicate things. There were things you didn't understand, but at the same point you could disregard them. They weren't too important. Here it's like, you have me asking too many things. Even the adventure games, for how edgy they weren't overly complicated. Here it's like, okay, wait, you didn't explain this. Why isn't this a thing? Wait, what's going on? And that's a main problem. With the story, and you all know that I love story. With the gameplay, I don't think the gameplay is inherently bad, but it suffers immensely due to the level design. It's very linear, very, very linear, even though there are quote-unquote alternate routes you can take, okay, whatever. But the levels are linear, and also there are way too many bottomless pits. And as a result, you have to not make the enemies as hard, and it's just, I hope that they can take this and see, like, okay, this is bad, this is not what we were going for, let's make it great next time. But again, how many times are we gonna say, okay, do it right next time? I can bitch about this incessantly. I can excuse myself from bitching incessantly. But I hope you guys liked here. Like, I can't go on just showing you this image for the rest of, like, 30 minutes or whatever. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me do this this piece of work. I didn't even get to talk about the drawing itself. But, you know, I tried to incorporate all 4 characters. I love the way they came out, except for my original character. Well, my fan character. Because I think he clouds up the image a little bit, but I wanted to incorporate him anyway. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and stay awesome. This is Jar5, signing off.